right. We did it. We're here. We've done it. Look at that, Milo. We did it. We got the live stream up and running. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm depressed. I don't think there's any sense denying it. I feel exhausted. I feel bad. I feel depressed. Have you noticed how the world is not even attempting to get any better? I've noticed it. It's just like, I've said it before on this channel, it's worth repeating, right? That I would rather live in a country that was fighting back against these declines and losing than experience what it is we are doing, which is purposefully and intentionally destroying the country and destroying the societies that we live in. I don't think you can mount a counter argument successfully and remain credible as a thinker or as an individual. Like, they've admitted it. The Federal Reserve in the United States has admitted that their goal is to go into a recession. There are no policies or plans in place. You've got all of the banks throughout Canada, the United States, saying that there's a recession coming, and you have literally nothing happening. Like, literally nothing happening to even attempt to prevent these things or acknowledge their existence in any meaningful or serious way. Like, and it's just becoming more and more obvious that we're ruled by children. Just absolute children. Like, Justin Trudeau's a child. Like, I saw a video of him recently. He went and was like packing bags for like a food bank or some kind of charity thing, and I'm just like, bro, like, you can mobilize like billions of dollars of resources. Like, the idea that the Prime Minister is going out there and packing lunches himself, I'm like, shut up. Like, shut up. It's embarrassing. Not only is it embarrassing to our intelligence, it's embarrassing to your station. You can hire people. Did you know that there are people who are in like an employment crisis? Did you know that there's a bunch of people who could actually be hired, right? You could hire people to do this. Like, this is the scale of the resources that this man has, but instead, no, we're just going to do a photo op where I go like pack some lunches for like 30 minutes. You know, get some video and spread it around, and we're all like supposed to buy into this. We're all supposed to be like, oh yeah, it's a serious, what a caring guy. That guy actually gives a shit. Like, it's insulting. It's insulting. And I genuinely want to meet the people who are like, did you see what Trudeau did? Did you see what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did? Yeah, he went to a food bank and he packed lunches for a half hour. Wow. Like, brutal. Brutal. And it just looks like the war is spreading. The Americans are hell-bent on collapsing their own civilization and their own economy. They're hell-bent on maximizing destruction while they do it. Like, hey, Conton, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Like, I haven't really commented on the Haitian, it's not really an invasion, it's just like the Americans and Canadians funneling more resources into their, you know, surrogate proxy groups, like they do all the time. And it seems to be something that like pops up on the media, and I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, it's beyond, like, you don't really need to comment on these things anymore. Like, the American empire is trying to secure itself, and does so through excessive violence. That's how it rolls. That's what it does. And it is going to force countries like Russia and countries like China into positions of war, and then blame them for it. Like, on Saturday Night Live recently, I wish I had saved this clip. I wonder if I could actually find it. On Saturday Night Live recently, there was a clip SNL Ukraine war, where they acknowledged that no, none of this. It's gonna take me forever to find it. It's fine. But they acknowledged the existence of the 2014 coup, right? But they didn't call it a coup, and they certainly didn't point out that it was the United States that was responsible for fomenting that coup and funding that coup, right? So what you're seeing is you're starting to see, and you saw the exact same pattern happen with the Iraq War, that eventually the populace comes into awareness and they begin to realize that, like, oh, the narrative that we've been given about these events is total bullshit. And so the systems of power have had to respond. And now they're trying to fold into the conversation that the reality of the event of 2014, while whitewashing, well, not whitewashing, but just cleansing the inclusion of the American empire in those events. So Yanukovych was removed from power, but we'll not mention that it was because we're funding neo-Nazi groups and backing terrorist organizations in Ukraine. We'll just not mention that. And now you're starting to see, like, what's the story that came out with China? China is, and people are like, China has not released its GDP numbers, and everybody's acting as though it's like, oh, come on, I'm the greatest show on earth. Yeah, here it is. China delays indefinitely the release of GDP and other economic statistics. And this, of course, has the capitalists in a tizzy, because the capitalists are addicted to the idea of having cheap labor. They don't want to actually use their own labor pool. They're quite happy that they destroyed the American middle class. And they would like to continue that process, which is why they're actively working to destroy the country, right? And now they're just stating it. And so, but as America is ramping up its war effort, especially against China, well, China's going to start messing with it back and going to start messing with it in ways where it can. Like, China can fully, with one act, China could actually destroy the American economy. Like, if it just created a labor embargo, if it just said, yeah, American companies can no longer produce their stuff here, that'd be it. That'd be the end of the American economy. It would collapse it instantly. It's the big reason why America is a bit like, yeah, I don't know about war. Like, I don't know about this direct connect, like, let's go to war with China kind of idea, because they know it's going to collapse the economy. But they're so addicted to war, and they're so addicted to the idea of white supremacy and manifest destiny and spreading their goodness throughout the planet that they can't help themselves. And they know that there's an inevitable war coming, which is why they're going to collapse their economy first on purpose, right? And then go to war with China, so that China won't collapse the economy, because they'll have done it already. Cotton says LATAM needs to probably ramp up security, start getting rid of compradors. Oh my God. If the U.S. can't colonize the east of Africa, they will come for Latin America, and more directly, more actual military moves. Well, and the hard reality is that when the American economy collapses, the empire is going to have to contract. Like, it's just the truth. Like, the American economy is not going to be able to sustain any of this. That what we are going to experience is an enormous ramp up in militarism from the United States as the empire begins to attempt to assert, well, I shouldn't say begins to attempt, but like as it attempts to assert its credibility through violence, which is the only thing it has left, right? It has no credibility. Like, the American empire, if you're still defending the American empire at this point, you have no credibility whatsoever, right? Like, it is a psychopathic Nazi regime that is gallivanting around the earth, and it's obvious. Like, it's obvious at this point. Like, you don't need to get a fucking PhD thesis at this stage in the game. Like, for fuck's sake, Guantanamo Bay should have told you this. Like, this you should be extremely aware of the level of fascism that exists within the American empire at this stage in the game. And they're just going to run out of money. Like, that's really what it's going to come down to. Like, they're going to run out of road here. And the empire is going to be forced to contract. They're going to be forced into a withdrawal. And it's the same thing that happened in Afghanistan. Like, they knew that they were going to withdraw from Afghanistan. They understood that intrinsically that they were going to withdraw from Afghanistan. But before they withdrew from Afghanistan, they blew it up. Like, Donald Trump, in his last act in Afghanistan, dropped a shit ton of bombs in there. And then when Biden got in, they pulled out. Well, expect to see the exact same thing happen literally everywhere else in the world. Like, where the American empire has spread its imperial death machine throughout all of the rest of the world. While it is forced to contract, it's just going to drop bombs everywhere it goes. Right? Because it's literally the only thing it knows how to do. It doesn't understand the concept of diplomacy. Like, straight up. The reason why there has not been a diplomatic resolution to what has gone on in Ukraine is because the United States is incapable of diplomacy. They don't understand the concept of it. From the basic bottom level of define diplomacy. What is diplomacy? The Americans don't understand what diplomacy is. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to begin the process of engaging in it. And most importantly, they view compromise as defeat. So even if they do engage in diplomacy, they're so fucking incompetent and bad and childish at it that they'll never actually go along with it. And then on top of any of that, if you actually do get a diplomatic resolution, the Americans will break it immediately. So they're untrustworthy. They won't even come to the table. They'll break every agreement that they make. And so what you end up with is you just end up with a petulant, idiotic, gigantic child with fucking nuclear bombs. That's what we have with the American empire right now. And we're about to watch it bloody its own nose and go into a major retraction. And the result of it it's the only thing that can happen. The result of it is going to be an enormous, massive upswelling spike of neo-Nazism and fascism in the country. And it's going to happen so radically. It's going to be so radical. It's going to happen so fast that people will not understand how to respond to it. They will be deer in the headlights. They will simply, they'll just keep going on with their normal day if they can, right? Because it'll be so blisteringly unexpected for them. Because most people are so atomized and disconnected from what's actually happening around them that when this starts to explode in their communities and in their faces and in their environments in massive and serious ways, they're simply not going to know what to do. I just can't overstate the speed at which it's going to happen. It's going to happen so fast. And the power structure, the power structure of capital, will begin ruling in a Nazi fascist way openly. And it'll be like the flipping of a switch. It'll be like the flipping of a switch. That the society will simply say, right now with the Jeffrey Epstein sex scandal, right? The Jeffrey Epstein pedophile island thing. The whole narrative surrounding that right now is just don't talk about it, right? Just don't talk about it. Just don't talk about it. That's the way that they're trying to get through it. And they're hoping that the society is just going to forget. right? That the society is just going to have amnesia about it, just forget about the fact that former presidents, billionaires, were raping children on an island, right? Like, just forget about it. Didn't happen. Well, seemingly overnight, they'll just be open about it. They'll just be like, yeah, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do about it? Like, we're not going to be incarcerated. We own the police. We own the FBI. We own the CIA. And in fact, the FBI and the CIA are in on it. Like, we're all part of it together. What are you going to do about it? And they're just going to start openly ruling this way. And the people who support them, right? Because there are people in the society who do support this and who do support these psychopaths, right? They're the ones that are going to get the money. They're the ones that are going to get rewarded. They're the ones that are going to get platformed. They're the ones that everybody's going to talk to, right? And you can already see that happening. Like, why do you think we're constantly bombarded with Crowder and Shapiro and Peterson, right? It's not because they're smart, certainly not. It's because they're funded by billionaires who jam them on every single platform all the time. And so you're forced to respond. And you're forced to listen. And if you have a country that's as illiterate as America is, which is incredible, it's astounding how illiterate America is, right? If you have that level of illiteracy in your country, well, then people who are barely literate are going to sound intelligent, and people who speak very quickly and say a lot of things are going to sound intelligent. And I just like... And it's just kind of annoying at this point for me. Like, it's... living in this society is fucking annoying. Like, the people in it are annoying and stupid. And it's frustrating to listen to the absolute garbage that comes out of the mouth of the average citizen, and the absolute stupidity that we all just live with on the day-to-day. We're all just like, yeah, I mean, I guess we're just dumb fucking morons being constantly stupid all the time. And we're not allowed to have serious adult conversations. And we're not capable of it. Like, we're not really capable of having serious adult conversations about these issues. Because we're so indoctrinated and we're so heavily propagandized by a system that insists that if you don't 100% espouse support for what the empire espouses, then you're a Putin stooge or whatever. And we're all just supposed to fucking go along with that. And the very people who are the worst offenders are the people who are screaming for freedom. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy to live in this world and in this society. Like, it's if we were rational, like if we were capable of rational and being rational thinkers, we would not go to work. Like, we literally would, like, stop participating in all of this. And if the landlords and if they tried to throw us out, we just wouldn't go. Like, there's this story floating around right now. Climate activists throw soup on Vincent van Gogh's sunflower to protest fossil fuels, right? This is making big headlines, and of course there is a narrative where it's like the Just Stop Oil organization is actually, if you do the digging, it's actually funded by someone who is involved in the oil companies and all this kind of stuff. But I don't care about any of that. And, like, forget about the fact that, like, yeah, the Van Gogh isn't just, like, sitting there out in the open. It's got glass covering it, so they didn't damage the picture at all, right? That it is a protest. This is what you do for protest. Here's my big complaint. They should have fucking destroyed that painting. They should have taken a hammer and smashed that glass. They should have destroyed that painting. Because my position is very simple. It's all going to burn down anyway. Like, this is like the major insane crux of everything that we're looking at in today's society, right? Everything you're looking at is going to burn down anyway. It's all gonna burn down anyway. Like, nothing is permanent. None of this exists in any kind of long-term sort of way. It's all burning down. Destroy it. Fucking destroy that painting. Like, I don't give a fuck about Van Gogh. Like, we as Westerners don't give a fuck about Van Gogh. Like, we don't care about art. We don't care about any of this kind of stuff. We're gonna burn it all down. Right? Why are we fucking... What are we fucking doing about any of this? Like, yeah, no, my complaint is that they didn't go farther. Light the building on fire. Like, if you want to do a protest like this, do it. Like, burn shit down. Like, I'm sorry, man. Like, we're living in, like, a Darth Vader, Voldemort, like, Lucifer level empire at this point that is actively seeking to destroy not only its economy, not only its population base, not only its people, but the species itself, down to, like, literally the level of us not having access to drinking water. Like, burn this shit down. Burn this shit down. Wait, are they a legit activist group or not? I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. There is a narrative going around that, like, they're funded by fossil fuel companies, and that the reason why the fossil fuel companies would fund this is to try to discredit climate change movements, right? Make them seem crazy is the narrative that I'm seeing. But my opinion is, like, this doesn't go nearly far enough. Like, my heroes are the people who tried to blow up pipelines. Like, those are my heroes. Like, this is baby shit. Like, this is baby shit. I don't consider this, like, a serious protest, frankly. But it's making headlines, and people are talking about it. And it's, and I'm just not seeing anybody actually have the brass to actually say, like, yeah, this is a good practice. Like, this is a good first step. This is a good first thing to do. Like, destroy these paintings. I don't know what I need to say. They're already gone. Like, they're not going to survive. Like, it's already going to burn down. And we're all just supposed to be like, yeah, you know, normal. I guess I'm going to go to work. You know, I'm going to get in my fossil fuel car and drive to my work and do this work thing so that people can get sandwiches. Like, we're astoundingly stupid. We're astoundingly stupid. Can you tell that I'm in a grim mood today? Can you tell that I'm in a grim mood today? Like, a lot of this stuff is going to stop being abstractions soon. I think that's the thing that has really hit me over this last weekend. That as I've been thinking about it and looking at it and all of that. A lot of this stuff has so far just been abstract and has been an abstraction, has been something that we're anxious about as it manifests itself and as we move into the future, right? Like, so it's been us dealing with the abstract nature of what it is to live in a society that is moving in this direction. Well, it's not going to be abstract much longer. That we are going to be dealing with death squads walking through the streets of Chicago and New York. We are going to be seeing that. We are going to be seeing climate change burn down cities. We are going to see these things. Like, that we are going to see the collapse of the dollar. We are going to see that. The collapse of the dollar is going to be absolutely astounding to watch. And something that I think people are not ready for it. They're simply not ready for it. That we're investing all of our stupid brain energy into dumb ideas like NFTs and cryptocurrencies, stupid, dumb, childish concepts like fake little money that we just print on screens, stupid concepts like meta, like these dumb, idiotic technologies that are just evolutionary dead ends. And you can see the consequences of all of this manifesting itself in serious ways in society. Like, we have a declining birth rate now. We've got a declining birth rate. Like, men and women are having a harder time connecting with one another and actually having a family than ever before. And this outcome, even the powerful are like, oh shit, like a declining populace is a major crisis. Like, it's a major problem for any civilization, for any country whatsoever, especially one like the United States that requires military recruitment in order to achieve its goals of domination and power. And so we've structured a society that's going into this ridiculous collapse that we're, at this point, we're doing on purpose. Like, we're doing it on purpose. We could for sure stop this, right? We could for sure stop this. It would just require confronting the capitalists, right? But the whole system is so corrupted and so incapable of responding rationally that we're just left with the stupidest people in the room having all the money. And everybody's scratching their heads going, oh, I wonder what happened. Grinning, good to see you, bud. When Notre Dame burned, I thought maybe we would find a way to be released from the symbols of imperialism. This act of vandalism made me feel the same way. When Notre Dame burned, the thing that I thought was so disgusting about the burning of Notre Dame is how much money came from the billionaire class. That the billionaire class was literally like, oh, Notre Dame? We gotta put money into that. And I was literally like, you guys are fucking frauds. Like, the wealthy want to burn the civilization down. I don't see any reason for us to follow their laws. I don't understand why we should. I can't see an argument for why we should pay any attention to any legal system that is in place, any legal structure. Like, if somebody could actually tell me the reason why we should follow this, outside of, like, they have guns and they'll shoot you, right? So just fascism, right? So outside of the fascist idea that we have the power, so we're going to use it, is there any legitimate reason to actually pay any attention to these guys? Like, go to Walmart, take stuff, walk out the door. I don't see any reason why people shouldn't just do that. Like, I don't understand why we should bother participating in this system as if it has legitimacy or credibility at all. And if somebody could attempt to create an argument for why we should, I'd gladly listen to it. But I don't see anything serious. Yeah, Andre, I think, is nailing it. They could probably just write it off, right? Oh, you donated money to fix up a building. Yeah, here's the tax credit, right? Oh, you donated money to try to save the civilization from burning down due to climate change? Oh, I don't know if we've got the money for that. Like, if it suddenly came about, like, let's say that an administration comes into the United States and there's a senator who actually says, like, maybe we should audit the CIA. Like, maybe we should actually know what the CIA is doing. Like they did with the Church Commission, right? And they do a whole audit of the CIA and they find out a bunch of stuff. Like the Church Commission, we found out about, like, Operation Mockingbird. We found out about a bunch of evil, sinister, like, satanic shit that the CIA was up to. And if that were to happen today, we would find a whole slew of just absolutely monstrous bullshit that this overt, crazed, demonic terrorist organization would absolutely be inflicting on the populace. And I wouldn't be surprised even for a moment if there was one thing that came out that was Operation Hellgate. And it literally was that at the bottom of the CIA, like in the basement of the CIA, there was a literal Hellgate that had been opened. And, like, the Dark Lord Luciferon had come through and infected the minds of all of the members of the CIA and was going through the political apparatus, just enslaving people in order to fulfill his demonic aims. And one of the major ones was to actually make climate change turn the Earth into a literal hell, because that's a more suitable environment for the demons that are coming through the Hellgate. Like, if that was the narrative that came out of the CIA in like a neo-church commission kind of thing, I'd be like, yeah. I wouldn't be, like, surprised by it at all. Like, there is no one's even attempting to mount a resistance. That's the part about it that I think is so disgraceful. That's the part about it that I think is so disgusting to watch. That no one is actually trying to mount a resistance that has any credibility whatsoever. It's literally, let's throw soup on glass-covered paintings. Like, fuck you. Fuck you. I'm so fucking tired of this absolutely garbage culture that we have. It's just a garbage culture. Like, these symbols create links to the past and remind us of different people's places in the prevailing order. Cathedrals and museums are no different than statues of U.S. Civil War Confederate leaders. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like, the Notre Dame, like, if they build a cathedral like Notre Dame and you're just like a peasant going around being like, oh, we're not going to fuck with that. Like, we're not going to fuck with the organization that's creating that kind of structure. Certainly in a medieval society, right? That, like, oh, these guys are actually building something really impressive. We're not going to fuck with them. But, like, what is the United States building? Like, what can you point at in Canada and the United States and go, like, that has value. Oh, that's, wow, I'm impressed. How impressive, right? This weak, pathetic, regressive, idiotic society that is doing everything it can to destroy itself on purpose at this stage. It has literally nothing to show for itself. And the people who are coming out to defend it are just reprehensible Nazis. Like, we're just getting to be like a disgraceful, pathetic, pedantic bunch of losers. And some of these guys, like, recently I saw Peterson stand up and actually say something bad about Justin Trudeau. But it's just so that the Conservatives can take power. Like, he has no analysis. Like, for all his defense of the hierarchy and of the meritocracy, he has literally no analysis of it. Because he's stupid, right? He just talks a lot. Like, and because he talks so much, people who are illiterate, which is half the population, go, wow, he's so smart. Like, maybe I should just become a cult leader. Like, I think I would be way more successful. I think I would be way more fucking successful if I just started a fucking cult, right? Just gathered a whole cult behind me and was just like, yeah, the Lord Xenu is coming to destroy us all. People are like, wow, the Lord Xenu. No, but instead I'm bound to this, which is telling the truth about the nature of our society. And people are like, that's not as fun as Xenu. I don't like that. I don't give a fuck. Broccoli Cheddar Rice, good to see you. Jeff Young for Kentucky is running on defunding the CIA. Yeah, they'll assassinate him. Like, we're at that stage now, right? When the Church Commission happened, the CIA was still kind of operating with the idea that maybe we should do things in order to protect the people of America themselves. And sure that sometimes we do kind of scummy stuff, but, like, it's for the goodness of the overall idea of America. The CIA now exists to protect Jeffrey Epstein. Like, that's what the CIA is doing. And not specifically Jeffrey Epstein, but the people who use his services, right? That they're there to protect pedophiles and rapists. That's the objective of the CIA. And so if they actually had, like, if Jeff Young for Kentucky actually did run for office and win the seat, right, and began an initiative in order to actually defund the CIA, they would assassinate him. Like, And I don't think that they would be particularly secretive about it. Like, I don't think that they would sit there and be like, we got to make it look like an accident. We got to, like, they literally just, Jeff Young says, congressman for Kentucky was assassinated today, right? And they just find some, like, lone gunman narrative, right? And then they would find another reason for what it was. Jeff Young was attempting to fight against the radicalization of, like, they would turn it into like Antifa. It was Antifa that they saw Jeff Young as a white supremacist supporting radical, right? And the whole narrative of Jeff Young defunding the CIA, that whole narrative will just fade out, because that's the primary way that these propagandists deal with the skeletons that they generate. They just stop talking about them, right? Like, nobody talks about Jeffrey Epstein. And the reason why I had like an epiphany over the weekend, because I was watching some shit. Some commentators. And the entire time they were talking, I was just like, are you guys just not aware of Jeffrey Epstein and that whole situation? Are you guys just, like, unaware of it? Like, and the answer is yes. Or if they are aware of it, they've forgotten. And to me, like, the Jeffrey Epstein story is actually the dead center of our cultural discourse. Like, Donald Trump, Bill Gates, Bill Clinton were getting on planes and going to an island where they were raping children. Like, we know that's the truth. Like, we know that's the truth. We literally have the manifest with their name on it. We know what was going down there. Ghislaine Maxwell is doing jail time for doing this. Like, we know. It's the dead center of our culture. The dead center of our culture, and we never talk about it. We straight up don't talk about it. And there's nobody in the mainstream media, or the legacy media, or the corporate media, or whatever bullshit term you want to use, that's actually saying, hey, there's a list. Ghislaine Maxwell had a fucking list, right? There's a list of people. We know she had it. We know it got put in to as evidence. We know that the FBI has it. We know that the people in power have this list. And they're not releasing it. Why? Because they know what it would do. Because they know who's on that list, right? They know that Bill Gates and Donald Trump and Clinton are on that list. They know that the powerful people who are running the country are on that list. And if they were to release said list, it might result in people of America going, yeah, we shouldn't probably be ruled by child rapists, right? Maybe those people should do jail time. Maybe there is such a thing as justice. Maybe there is such a thing as moral truth, right? Like, we live in a world that's trying to convince us that it's all moral relativism, that every act that exists in the world is moral relativism. Well, when it comes to child rape, I don't think it flies. And I think most people in the society would go, yeah, we should probably incarcerate those men. We should probably take Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, and put them in a jail cell for the rest of their lives, right? And just forget about them. Seize their assets, redistribute it into the society. But we're not going to do that because we're pathetic, right? Because we have the attention span of a goldfish. Because we're like fucking canaries that are literally just like, oh, that's red over there. I really like that over there. Oh, man, that's blue over there. I really like that over there. Oh, man, did you see that red thing? Look at that red thing. Oh, my God. And we just literally forget that, like, we forgot about the Ukraine war because of a fucking slap on an Oscar stage. Like, we don't have the capacity, the ability, the comprehension, or the will to actually give a shit about the absolute dead center of our culture, which is absolutely Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island. And we're just, like, not doing anything about it. We're throwing soup on fucking glass. That's what we're doing. And being like, oh, I think these climate guys went too far. I think that might be, this seems like it's a bit, like it fucking matters. Like it fucking matters at all. And I think this is right. Good to see you, Major, by the way. The wealthy get off on doing horrible things in public and getting away with it. It shows they're far above the rabble. Yeah. Like, they live in their own world. They live in their own universe. And they're fine with collapsing the American economy. They're fine with collapsing the Canadian economy, right? They don't live there. They're going to go somewhere else. They're going to go live in some other world. They're going to go just build another Jeffrey Epstein fucking pedophile island somewhere, right? That's what they're doing. Like, that's what they're doing. That all of this is just going to turn into hunting grounds for them, right? They're already turning the cities into essentially playgrounds, into just places that they can come jet set into, fuck around in for however long they want and leave, right? And it benefits the powerful to cover up each other's crimes. If you want to see a perfect illustration of this, you should watch the movie American Psycho. In the movie American Psycho, what I remember American Psycho, the ending is that Bateman goes on this enormous killing spree. So just like no way that you could possibly hide this, right? Like, he goes on this fucking killing spree. He knows that he's fucked. He knows that he's gonna get caught. Right? He's losing his mind because he's killed all these people and hidden them in an apartment, right? And then at the end of it, he shows up at the apartment that he was hiding these bodies in, and it's all been cleaned up, and it's all been gone, right? And it's all been taken care of. And then he encounters the realtor, right? And they have an interaction where it's obvious that she knows what he is, and she knows who he is, right? And he obviously figures out that she knows, and so he just leaves, right? And I remember the entire narrative surrounding this event and the ending of American Psycho was like, oh, he's just crazy, you know? Did he even kill those people? Right? He's just living in his head, you know? Wow, crazy, right? But the true narrative is that powerful people will cover up each other's crimes because it benefits them. That woman walked in to that apartment, saw that it was littered in bodies, and had two choices. Get rid of the bodies, right? Get rid of the bodies, repaint the thing, and start showing a multi-million-dollar property in Manhattan to people instantly, or call the police, launch a big gigantic police investigation, and have this property taken off the market, lose a couple $1 million for doing the right thing. So she made her choice and protected Bateman. And it's the same story later when the lawyer goes like, no, this guy who you killed, right? I had lunch with him later on in a place, right? So he's just creating an alibi for Bateman because he knows that if Bateman were to get captured by the police, it would be a huge scandal for his law firm, right? And that he would lose money and that it would be a big, gigantic scandal. So he's covering, right? Because the wealthy, the psychopaths that rule this place, will always cover for one another because it makes dollars and cents to do so. I know, buddy. I know. A few acres of snow, good to see you. I once knew a church leader who would verbally abuse his wife from the pulpit. He did it several times in front of rooms with other church leaders. I think he was showing that he was untouchable. Brutal. Speaking of covering up others' crimes, Sweden is refusing to investigate the Nord Stream pipeline bombing. Yeah, because they know who did it. And Germany says it's too sensitive to reveal who did it. Yeah, because they all know who did it. And now you're seeing China pull out of it's drawing back on the amount of energy that it's sending to Europe now. Like, China is getting ready for war. There's no other way to describe what I'm seeing. That, like, China is obviously preparing for a full-scale, and I think it is going to be a full-scale war. That America is going to become unhinged. It's not going to be able to stop itself, right? That, like, as the pot it's like saying that a boiling pot should not produce bubbles. Like, it's just going to do it. Like, and the American empire, I think, is just not capable of stopping itself from doing it. That that it has to. And I think China is aware of this and is pulling all of its resources. It's becoming very insular. It's becoming like the re-election of Xi Jinping alone should signal this. It's very rare for the Chinese to elect for a third term a leader. They tend to replace leadership sooner than that, almost as a policy, but they know, and the people of China know that they are heading into a war, like and that the Chinese are maneuvering themselves and positioning themselves to prepare for this war. And it's the reason why, like, everybody's, anytime I see a Western apologist talking about China, they're like, well, the Chinese GDP has gone down and their amount of their wealth is so fun. And I'm literally like, yeah, because they've needed to build a bunch of fucking military infrastructure that you don't talk about, right? They've needed to build a bunch of tanks, and they've needed to build a bunch of munitions, and they've needed to build a bunch of missiles, and a bunch of missile defense, and a bunch of naval power, right? That you just don't talk about. And the reason why you don't talk about it is because you're trying to pretend as though America isn't hell-bent on pursuing this path of war. That is its only solution. It doesn't have any solutions. It's dead. It has no credibility left. It's not interested in being credible. It's not interested in producing anything credible. At this stage in the game, it's just trying to play this sort of intellectual shell game of obfuscation to try to gaslight the public into not recognizing what's happening. And that's your Shapiros and your Crowders and your Petersons, right? The problem is you. Look at your own life. Right? Focus on all that kind of stuff. Don't pay any attention. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Like, that's straight up what it is. Like, imagine if in The Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain had have been revealed, but then there was this entire structure of thought and people and all this kind of stuff who successfully deflected Dorothy away from the reality that it's just a fucking guy. Like, it's just some asshole. And we're all supposed to just keep going along with it, as if this system that we live in has any credibility whatsoever, when it has obviously, and I really mean it, obviously removed credibility and rational thought from its thinking pattern at all. That at this stage in the game, what we are looking at is a wild animal. That's it. Just a wild animal, wide-eyed, feeling threatened, right? That its goal and its idea of dominating the rest of the planet through military force is failing. That they're not going to be able to actually achieve those goals. You can see that with the struggle that's between America and Russia right now. That America can't defeat Russia. They can't get in there and do significant damage to Russia. Why? Because they know what that will mean, right? They know that will lead to an existential war where they will be destroyed, right? And nobody wants to be responsible for that. And so they can't even defeat Russia. What do you think is going to happen when they confront China? Like, what do you think is going to happen when they confront China? Like, they're going to lose, and they're going to lose badly, and it's going to embarrass them. And that embarrassment is going to manifest itself into frustration and humiliation, which, guess what fascists do to a frustrated and humiliated populace? They direct them against trans people, minority groups, which we're seeing. Like, we're seeing it. Like, if you're a person of color and you're living in America and you're listening to this, find groups now. Get stocked up now. Your society is turning on you. There's just no other way to describe it. And we're all just still going to work. Gotta make sure I shuffle those papers around. Gotta make sure I flip those fucking burgers. Gotta make sure that the people who are actually betraying themselves get little snacks and dainties when they go walking in a trail. Like, we're fucking crazy. The Republicans will probably take the Senate and the House the next election. Yeah, that's gonna happen for sure. I don't see how that could possibly not happen. And because of that, America will pivot from fighting Ukraine to fighting China. I would make the argument that the fight in Ukraine is about fighting China. That on the geopolitical stage, weakening Russia does weaken China. That what fundamentally what the war in Ukraine is about, from the American perspective, is cutting Russia off from Europe. Specifically, the Belt and Road Initiative. Right? The Belt and Road Initiative runs from Moscow into Minsk, into Warsaw, and into the rest of Europe. Like, if you take a look at... I gotta find a better map than this, but this is decent enough. Right? This is the Belt and Road Initiative. That all geopolitical discourse surrounds the Belt and Road Initiative. It's why you never hear about it. Because if you knew about the Belt and Road Initiative and you understood the Belt and Road Initiative better, you would actually understand why the United States acts the way it does. Right? This is a major trading rail system that goes out from China, as you can see, into Russia, right? And there are two choke points, right? Because America doesn't want China to be connected to Europe this way. America wants China to have to force its boats to go around the Horn of Africa up into Europe this way so that it can destroy those boats, right? Because its objective and the way that the Americans are approaching China is that they want to weaken China's economy by disrupting its naval trade, right? But China's response to this has been to build rails, right? To actually build significant rail transport to get it into the rest of the world. And so a big reason why this war is happening, right, is to disrupt, is to make it so that this rail that's going from Moscow to Minsk, into Warsaw, into Berlin, will stop sending goods from China into Europe, right? What do you think they mean when they say supply chain disruptions? What do you think that means? That's exactly what that means. When you're sitting there being like, man, I can't get my whatever, like, and somebody says, yep, supply chain disruptions, it's this. This is what it is, right? And the plan for them was to, you can see they've built the rail into Tehran, and the plan was to get that built into Turkey and then have it come up through here, right? And so they're doing everything they can to disrupt this as well. Make it so that this rail never gets built. Make it so that they can never actually get trade going directly from China into Europe. Because they want the Europeans to be on side, and they're willing to destroy the European populace in order to do it. That's why there's an enormous project going on in Saudi Arabia right now, the NEOM project, right? Which is right here where my cursor is, right? They're building this so that they can get a rail from Tehran to Baghdad to NEOM, which is a new city that's being built. And then they can take that rail and build it underneath the Gulf of Aqaba and get it into the Suez Canal. And thereby connect by land, get connected into Africa. Right? So that the American strategy of destroying all of the Chinese trade in the Gulf or in the oceans, right, will be ineffective. Like it will cut China off from places like Cuba, Venezuela, right, from South America, from these places. But the goal for the Chinese is to build trade networks that will connect them to most of the rest of the world's population by land. It's an enormous threat to the Americans. It's an enormous threat to the Americans. And in my view, like, the reason why the Americans are not interested in resolving this is because they don't want the goods to start flowing back in from China. And so there's a continuity of thought. It's not that the Democrats are hyper-focused on Russia and the Republicans are hyper-focused on China. It's that there's a continuity there, that the military-industrial complex that exists in America has an idea and has a thought about how it wants to pursue it. It's just so fucking stupid and arrogant that it actually thinks it's going to work, when it's not going to fucking work. Like, the Chinese can build faster than the Americans can bomb. And the American idea most of the rest of the world is starting to come wise to this. They're starting to be like, oh yeah, you deal with Americans and you get fucked up. You get fucked up. It happens over and over and over again. And so lots of people are starting to look around and be like, well, who's stable? Who's actually stable? You know who's stable? China. China's fucking stable. Like, of course it's a place that has problems. Of course you could point at it and critique it and all kind of, and you should, right? But if you compare it, if you do a compare and contrast between China and America and ask yourself which one of these two looks fucking stable, pretty clear where that comes down to. It's all about China and it's all about the Belt and Road Initiative. That's the entire narrative, right? If you're not including the Belt and Road Initiative in what you're thinking about geopolitically on the world stage, then you're just not thinking about geopolitics. Just straight up. And that's why it never gets discussed. That's why nobody talks about it, right? Because they want the populace to be as illiterate as possible. Like, that's pretty obvious, right? It's really important to the power structure that the populace remains completely illiterate. And the more illiterate they are, the better. So you got to make sure that people don't know what's going on. You got to make sure that people have no concept of what's happening. So that they can put forward the most idiotic ideas they possibly can. And have people go, yeah, that sounds right. Because they have no other fucking idea. Yeah. My only reason for not shoplifting from Walmart is I don't want the police to harass me. But if people started doing it en masse, I would help. Here's a fun fact. First of all, hello, pug. Hi, buddy. I know. So Walmart used to hire mystery shoppers, right? And the whole idea of the mystery shopper is that you would go along and try to catch people shoplifting, right? That was the whole concept. But they started to do a bean counter kind of a thing, right? Like a bean counter came in, and they actually found out that they were spending more trying to prevent theft than they were losing in theft. And so they just got rid of the position. And across the board in retail stores, especially big corporate ones, there is just a straight up like don't confront attitude when it comes to theft. Like, have you ever walked in to a big gigantic supermarket chain and the tills are way the fuck over there and the exit/entrance is way the fuck over there? Like, you don't need to go through the till to get to the exit. The exit is like right there. That's what this is about. It's that they know that people steal, and they know that it costs them a lot of money to try to pursue that theft. And so they don't. Right? That they're so big, and they're so gigantic, and they're so enormous, that they lose more money trying to prosecute theft than they gain by just letting it happen. Put groceries in a grocery bin and walk away. Having Republicans in charge of the legislature means that they will investigate Biden's family and start impeaching some of his administration. It'll be a good show. But that's just it. That's all it'll be. Like, it's just a fucking show. Like, and it's just like it's like the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. Like, it has no meaning. It's going to result in nothing meaningful. And in the meantime, the war machine moves on and the destruction of the populace continues. Right? It's just theatrics, and I don't know. Like, enjoy it, I guess, but I don't. I roll my eyes at that shit. Like, and I actually consider it to be really boring. Like, I really do. Like, I find the whole, like, laptop thing, Hunter Biden's laptop, I find it to be extremely boring. Like really, I would rather, like, talk to some grandpa about, like, you know, Vietnam stories or something. Like really, what is the narrative in the Hunter Biden laptop story? That Hunter Biden's son is corrupt and goes and has sex with a bunch of prostitutes and does a bunch of drugs. It's like, yeah. Like, I guess if you have, like, a really childish opinion of how the society is structured, and okay, I won't do it. I won't do it. I was gonna do it, but then you made such a fuss. You made such a fuss. I know, you're just like me. Here I am making a fuss. And you here are also making a fuss. I can appreciate that, buddy. Okay, I love you, bud. Another disgusting sign of the depravity of the elites, Biden announces he will sign abortion rights into law only if the Democrats keep the House in the midterm. Yeah, they're just holding people's intrinsic rights hostage, right? Like, fighting for nothing. Like, everything's just a trade negotiation, right? Like, it just... And like, it's embarrassing, right? It's embarrassing. It like, literally using this... using abortion rights as an election token, which they lost anyway. Like so you gave away a negotiating token, and then you're going to turn around and say that you're going to get it back only if you win the election. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up. It's so embarrassing. Republicans really wanted to go after Merrick Garland, the current Attorney General. All right. Yeah, blackmailing the entire female gender and other people who can get pregnant. Vote for me or else I let the fascists take away your rights. Yeah, he had 2 years to do it. The Democrats have had 50 years to enshrine that. Like, get completely fucked with this idea. Like, this whole concept, it's just gotten embarrassing. It's just gotten embarrassing. That we shouldn't be looking at this with shock or goodness me, like any of that attitude. Like, we should be snickering at how fucking embarrassing these children are. Because that's what it is. It's just childishness. Programs, get your programs. You gotta control the world island. I mean, for calling this, like, this is most of the world. Like, America is just like this small, like, little boil on the side of the earth as far as anybody should be concerned. Most of the world's population is here. Like, and America is just turning itself into just a backwater, like, boil of like, for most of the rest of the world, America is that island of supervillainy where, like, the heroes go and there's like a skull on the island and they've got to find the villain and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's America, and it's steadily turning itself into that. Like, Florida is literally just this, like, dingy shithole swamp island, right? All of the water levels are going to go up, so the whole place is just going to be in total disaster. Because they've done nothing to try to confront it or prevent any of it from happening. Yeah, the Belt and Road Initiative bypasses the U.S. Navy. It also cuts London out of its lucrative ship insurance industry, yeah? Well, and yeah, of course, they also want all of Russia's resources. I mean, yes. Like, if it was up to the Americans, Russia would already just be a vassal. Like, I think that's the reason why they said no to Russian NATO membership, is that Russian NATO membership ultimately means that the Americans have decided that Russia should have its own control of its own resources and thereby its own destiny. And it's just something that the Americans can't tolerate. They can't tolerate the idea of a country that's resource rich, that having its own stability and having its own say of what happens in its own borders. They just really can't tolerate that. They either have to own you or you have to be destroyed, right? And we saw them do that in Laos and China and Vietnam and all of that. Then when there was an alternative idea coming up in some other countries, they literally went in saying out loud in public that we are doing this exclusively to staunch the spread of communism. So it's an ideological war from the outset. It's a death cult going after a competitor because they see that competitor and that competing ideology or idea as a threat. That's 100% what it is. And they've never stopped doing that, right? We're gonna go into Iraq and spread democracy. We're gonna turn them into a liberal democracy, right? Like, it's the same shit. That if there's a country that wants to run itself based on some other principle other than the death cult, then they'll be destroyed. Just straightforwardly. Like, that, take a look at what happened in fucking Libya. They fucking just went in there and blew the shit out of it. Turned it into a literal slave state. So badly that even Putin was like, even Putin condemned what they did. Like, it's crazy what they did in Libya. And anybody with any basic sense, forget about moral aptitude, basic sense, would say that what they did in Libya was an enormous war crime. Like, the people that perpetrated Libya, people like Hillary Clinton, people like Obama, should stand trial for war crimes. Just like George Bush with Iraq, right? Like, these fucking war criminals, as bad as Hitler, as bad as any of these Nazis, they should be put on trial for war crimes. They should go to Nuremberg and they should be hung. I don't even, that's not an extremist position. Like, I think that that's a fairly rational position to take. That when people commit mass murder, they should go to jail, at least. Like, I don't know why that's confrontational or extremist at all. What's extremist is saying they shouldn't. To me, that's extreme. Azerbaijan, Armenia, right on the southern route. Guess what? Coincidentally, also in an armed conflict. Absolutely. Yeah, have you noticed that lately the Saudis aren't playing ball with the Americans like they used to? This, I say it all the time, and I hope people don't misunderstand what I mean when I say this, because the Saudi regime is certainly evil, like, definitely, but they're geniuses. Like, the Saudi Arabians are geniuses, and they've always been this way. Like, I think when it comes to power, when it comes to positioning themselves in power in order to protect themselves and maximize their profits, they're geniuses. And the proof's in the pudding. Like, I don't think that you can deny it. That, like, while during the period of George Bush's crusade in the Middle East, right, during all of that kind of crazy shit, they had themselves positioned so they didn't get bombed, they didn't get invaded, and they maximized their profits, right? And now it's all shifting away. The Americans are pulling out of this region because there's nothing left to destroy, right? Everything that the Americans wanted in the region, they've essentially got. They're pouring resources into Syria. They're doing all of this kind of other stuff. And so there's a rising power in the region, which you can see obviously on the screen in front of you, which is obviously China, right? And the Saudis are pivoting to China because they understand that, okay, for this next period of time, right, the Americans have nothing to offer us anymore. They're not going to invade us because they don't see us as a threat, and they don't see us as some... There's no benefit to them for invading us, right? So they're not going to invade us. They're not going to destroy us. They're not going to blow us up. But they have nothing to offer us, right? They can't offer us money, resources, riches of any sort, right? And it looks to us, and as it should to anybody with even a moderate brain in their head, that they're collapsing their own economy on purpose to erect essentially a monarchy, right? Which the Saudis don't mind this, by the way. Like, the Saudis are like, yeah, erect a monarchy. We're a monarchy, right? Like, do it. It's fine. But there's going to be turmoil there. It's going to be difficult, right? It's going to take America a couple of several hundred years to recover because of what they've done. Like, unless the populace actually gets off their ass and surrounds the halls of power, then it might be only 50 years. Right? Just like the New Deal, right? It might be 50 years. But I don't see that happening because I think Americans are too stupid. I think that they're going to have to go through a literal civil war. And that civil war itself is going to take 50 years. And so you're going to have that. And then perhaps after that, there might be a reconstruction period. So you're looking at like 150 to 200 years before America actually recovers and becomes a sane place where anybody would want to spend any amount of time for even a moment. And during that period of time, the Saudis are pivoting right to China. They're going to connect a rail system. They're going to connect the Belt and Road Initiative into Africa, be the only land route for the Chinese into Africa. They're going to make trillions of dollars. They're going to make so much fucking money. if all they do is put like a 0.01% trade cost for everything that comes through the port at Neom, they're gonna make trillions of dollars. And you can see their brilliance in terms of how they've pivoted in terms of their energy projects, right? That instead of taking all of their oil and sitting on it the way Americans do, and insisting that, like, oil lasts forever, we should reinvest in coal. Instead of any of that, they're literally just like, oh, like, solar panels. Solar, wind, all that stuff. All that stuff. We're going to take all of the money that we're making from our oil reserves, and, hey, the Chinese are connecting a line to us, all that kind of stuff. Hey, who's creating all these solar panels? Oh, the Chinese? Let's go! And they're marching into their deserts, and they're just covering them with solar panels. And they don't give a fuck. Like, all of these Westerners that are coming out being like, oh, solar energy, there's real problems with solar. Yeah, there's real problems with solar energy. You need batteries. And the Saudi Arabians' response to this has been like, fuck you. Shut up. You're dumb. Someone's got to do this. We are going to do this. Will there be problems? Obviously. Guess who's going to figure it out? We will. And in 150 years, after you guys wake up from your self-implosion, we're going to have a country that not only is layered with the new technology that any stable society is going to need moving forward into the future, not only are we going to be covered in that shit, we'll be producing more and selling it to the rest of the world at a profit for ourselves. Not only that, we're also going to be a key land-based link between the most stable economy on the planet, which is China, and the fucking largest base of population on the planet that's developing and building itself and wants resources coming in. We're a key linchpin and all that. Well, you fucking guys are like, what is a woman? What is a woman? We're like doing shit. And yeah, the Saudis are evil. They're maintaining a genocide in Yemen. They're fucking maintaining a genocide in Oman, right? They openly behead people. They're creating a regime of terror, without a doubt. Doing everything they can to do like a PR stunt for the West to be like, yeah, we let women drive now, so that makes us good. But they're geniuses. Like, they're Machiavellian geniuses. Like, they really do see the world as it is. Instead of in this absurdist white supremacist, like, mindset idea of, like, we have a manifest destiny to rule the world because we're white. Western civilization has dictated that we are the winners. This is the end of civilization. And all of that shit that's going on, the Saudis are literally sitting there being like, that'll be $100 billion, please. Thanks for your business. Like, I suspect by the end of my lifetime, it'll already be in place. Like, it'll already be set up so that the Saudis are, like, gonna be one of the most powerful, like, definitely the most powerful country in this region. And the tension between Saudi Arabia has always been Saudi Arabia and Iran, right? But Saudi Arabia and Iran have always kind of been at loggerheads with one another. And as Iran is going into this internal turmoil that it's going into, which incidentally is an inevitability. It was always inevitable that this would happen, right? Like, the only reason Iran has been stable during this period of time is because the Iranian citizens are sitting there going like, yeah, war. Like, it's a fucking war. Like, we know what's going on. We've got Afghanis coming across our border en masse. We've got a huge refugee crisis. Not only do we have it happening on our eastern border with Afghanis, we've got it on our western border with Iraqis. So there's this crazy conflict going on. And the guy that's in charge is basically like, we will rule with the glory and force of Allah. And we're all going, that's fine, bud. As long as the food keeps coming in, right? That's fine. But now the Westerners are starting to pull out. Now there's less heat going on. The war is up in Ukraine now, right? That's where all the heat is, or up in Syria, right? Which is far enough away, and all of that seems to have kind of stabilized now. So the citizens of Iran are basically going, yeah, okay, enough with the Allah guy. Like, enough with this, right? Like that's all well and good when we needed people like with a strong arm shooting people, right? Like that's great. But now we need to have a deeper conversation about what it is to be a human being and what it is to live in a fucking stable world. And that's perfect for Saudi Arabia. Because Saudi Arabia is just like, oh yeah, great. You have your internal crisis. You have your internal conflict. You have your internal turmoil. And focus on yourself, Iran. Focus on yourself. We're just going to keep building power plants. We're just going to keep building solar panels so that when you are ready to stand up for yourself and declare this is what it is to be an Iranian, we'll sell you the energy you need to do it. We'll be happy to. I love talking about Saudi Arabia, man. Like these guys are gonna straight up, like, they're so smart. Like they're so smart. They're evil, but they're smart. Like, and I think that just goes to show you, like, I say it all the time on this show. Like I would rather that we were actually fighting the conflicts that were important and losing than doing what we're doing now, right? And I would rather live in a country that was evil but smart than evil and stupid, right? Like, we're very stupid. We're obviously getting played by everybody. Everyone obviously has us pegged. Like, they know what we are. And we're just a crazy, belligerent, wild monkey, as far as they're concerned. And many of them are starting to realize, as Saudi Arabia is the case in point of just like, oh, you're a wild fucking animal. Do I need to pay attention to you anymore? No? Great. That's basically what's happened. Because, like, I don't know why you'd ever want to attach yourself to America, dude. Like, it's obviously blowing up. Also, China was going to build a major port in Myanmar, which would let them circumvent the U.S.-controlled Malacca Strait. Guess what? Myanmar is fighting an insurgency. Yeah. So many interesting coincidences. Exactly. Yeah. And, like, that one's, like, real straightforward, right? Like, that's straight up just, like, Americans are trying to coup the place. I don't know why the average citizen struggles with this idea anymore. Like, I honestly don't know why the average citizen is sitting there being like your first assumption should always be the Americans are coupping it. Like, it's at this point it's you're likely more, it's like, it's more likely the case that that's the truth, you know? Like, it's just, oh, this place is falling into disrepair and collapsing and there's internal insurgents and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's the U.S. So it's what they do. That's how they are. That's what they've always done. They're not going to stop. That's why it's so frustrating talking to citizens today about Ukraine, because nobody wants to hear the United States couped the government in 2014, which is like, yeah, of course they did. That's what they do. Like, that's what they do. They've done it all over the place. They did it in Iraq, right? They've done it all throughout Latin America. They've done it all throughout the Middle East. They've done it all throughout Africa. As recently as this year, they couped 5 different governments in Africa this year. But like, oh, Ukraine, no, it's off limits. Why? Because they're white. Like, that's what it is. That the average Canadian citizen, the average white Canadian citizen, the average white American citizen is sitting there being like, well, they wouldn't call Ukraine. Ukraine's white. They're a civilized nation. Fucking brutal. Meanwhile, the national parasite of the U.S. is hookworm. Oh. We could provide deworming meds to Americans for a pittance, but apparently we need to bomb the world. Yeah, exactly. Speaking of that kind of shit, let's terrify you guys. Let's go. Let's just go for the terror. Experts slam Boston lab where scientists have created a new deadly COVID strain with an 80% kill rate. Huh? Huh? You thought that we had a plague? You haven't seen a fucking plague. You motherfuckers haven't seen a plague yet. We made one. In a lab. Huh? Boston University scientists were today condemned for playing with fire after it emerged they had created a lethal new COVID strain in a laboratory. DailyMail.com revealed the team had made a hybrid virus combining Omicron and the original Wuhan strain that killed 80% of mice in a study. The revelation exposes how dangerous virus manipulation research continues to on even the U.S., despite fears similar practices may have started the pandemic. Professor Shamuel Shapira, a leading scientist in the Israeli government, said, "This should be totally forbidden. It's playing with fire." You know that if the Israelis are saying that it's too far, it's too fucking far. Gain-of-function research, when viruses are purposefully manipulated to be more infectious or deadly, is thought to be at the center of COVID's origin. A Chinese laboratory located just miles from the first cluster of cases carried out similar research on bat coronaviruses. But the practice has been largely restricted in the U.S. since 2017. Dr. Richard Ebright, a chemist at Reuters University in New Brunswick, New Jersey, told DailyMail.com that the research is a clear example of gain-of-function research. He added, "If we are to avoid a next lab-generated pandemic, it is imperative that oversight of enhanced potential pandemic pathogen research be strengthened." We're just trying to kill ourselves. I can't possibly come up with any other explanation for how we are. Like, we want to be eradicated. Like, I think that's the case. That we're looking at the world and we're thinking to ourselves, nah, this needs to go. We need to blow this shit up. We need to. Now you have another color revolution attempt in Iran with the recent protests. This less than a year after a failed attempt in Kazakhstan. Both centrally important nodes in the Belt and Road. Yes, absolutely. Like the stream or you're a lazy capitalist. That's right. That's right. Vegetable Bird. Don't think I've ever seen you here. Good to see you. Hope you're still in the chat. What are the chances of Canada becoming communist? 0. We're heading for a full-scale like fascist collapse, dude. Like, the chances of Canada actually becoming communist, like, we're gonna see a full-scale revolution before that happens. And the structure of the Canadian electoral system, it has built itself to purposefully eliminate communists from the conversation. That it's not possible for communists to actually become part of the conversation in any kind of meaningful or serious way. And if communists do become more prominent within the electoral system, they suddenly have their houses raided, right? There's suddenly a big scandal of some kind, right? There's suddenly an accident. Oh, that person just got out. And the most extreme cases, they just get straight up arrested. They just straight up go to their houses and take them and put them in jail, right? Like the idea that the reason why we are facing an economic collapse on the scale that we are about to experience is because childishly we refuse to listen to critics and criticism. We refuse to listen to people who are standing up and saying, we think that there's a better way to move forward. And there is, incidentally, a better way to move forward. But anytime anybody actually stands up and talks about that, the conversation immediately gets shut down, right? If you actually stand up and say, hey, it's cheaper to house people than have homelessness, right? Then, communism killed 100 billion people. Communism killed 100 billion people. And you just find yourself drawn into this childish, idiotic, brain-dead conversation of how many people communists killed. Right? The Holodomor killed 500 billion people. We're killing so many, and that discredits the entire... Like, it's just so fucking ridiculous. What do you think about the Emergency Act inquiry going on right now in Ottawa? I am waiting for the results. I'm remaining completely silent on the Emergency Act inquiry until we actually get the story and the documents. I think that it is an important inquiry that is happening. It is obviously going to be stacked with pro-liberal people who are obviously going to do everything they can to produce a narrative that makes the government's decision to enact the Emergency Act seem warranted. But I suspect that they'll come out with something that, and I suspect what'll happen is that they'll come out with a narrative that the media will all go, oh, that seemed, there's legitimacy here. This seems perfectly legitimate. Like, so, like, just as a guess, it's like, there were police reports where some of these guys had rifles in their trucks. And so that's a clear and present danger. So we had to evoke the Emergencies Act because some of these independent truckers who are on the road most of the time and are incidentally right-wing rural people had rifles in their place they spend most of their time. Like, yeah. But what they'll do is they'll release that information with like this, like, can you believe it? Can you believe it? And the media will be like, oh my goodness, we have to have a serious conversation about gun control in this country, oh my god. Like a bunch of Muppets. When the truth is like, yeah, obviously they do. Like, I'm sorry, obviously. Like, I grew up around rural folk. I grew up around truckers. Right? If you said to a trucker, you know, it's wrong for you to have a rifle in your truck, you would get some stories. You would get some pretty hard-nosed, mocking stories, and they would make you look stupid. Like, you would walk away from that conversation looking stupid. Because you are. Like, you are. I'm sorry. Like, if you're upset because a trucker has a rifle in his truck, you're a baby. Grow up. Like, of course they do. What, you think the world is precious and full of rainbows and sunshines? You think that a guy who's by himself on driving across Canada and the United States shouldn't have the ability to protect himself? I think you're a fucking idiot. Like, I think you're a fucking idiot. And I suspect that this is the narrative that they will come out with. That they're gonna make a whole show about how some of these truckers had rifles and that's a reason to evoke the Emergencies Act and all this kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, but they weren't wielding them. They weren't walking around being like, we've got guns and we're gonna shoot anybody and all that kind of stuff. Like, they weren't, there's no pictures of that, there's no evidence of that, right? And even the Ottawa police themselves, the Ottawa police chief himself said that we didn't ask for the Emergencies Act to get used. We felt like we had the situation under control, right? So, in my opinion, what happened is that the convoy took over that bridge, which I think was effective. It was an effective protest strategy because it actually has economic consequences, and the Liberal government evoked an Emergencies Act in order to go after the protesters and the central organizers, and to send a message to everybody out there saying very clearly, don't do this. We will do this to you if you do this. Like, that's in my opinion, that's what happened. Is that, like, the legitimacy of the act is beside the point. I don't think it was legitimate. And I'll be interested to see what their excuse is for why they did it. And it'll be interesting to see how childish the response is from the pro-liberal and side. Of just like, wow, they had guns? What? Like, it's going to be baby-brained, right? And it's going to be baby-brained from people who you respect. Like, it's going to be baby-brained from people who you actually like. You're going to see some really, really bad takes from people who are otherwise intelligent. And but I don't think the Emergencies Act was warranted. I think that we should consider it a threat against the civilian population. I think that the Freedom Convoy was effective, loud, made a lot of mistakes. I think that that's certainly the truth. But I don't think that that's unique. Right? Like, the Occupy Wall Street movement, like, the Occupy Wall Street movement was way more disruptive than the Freedom Convoy. Way more disruptive. Maybe a little bit less intimidating because they didn't have like gigantic like hardware, like fucking trucks. But like the Occupy Wall Street movement was like taking over entire city blocks and shit. Like it was shutting down entire infrastructure. It just was unwieldy, so it wasn't very effective. And the mistake that the Freedom Convoy guys made is that they did something effective. Right? They took over a bridge. And you can't fucking do that. You can't do that. And so the capitalists just went nuclear and basically said, okay, we're shutting it down. Right? And so I'm going to wait until the Emergencies Act inquiry actually ends before I do like a final analysis, obviously. But right now, I just don't see how they can pivot to anywhere else. Like, what's their actual excuse for evoking the Emergencies Act? And the only thing that I can think that they'll try in order to convince the populace that there was legitimacy is that they're like, Jim Bob McGuff of Saskatchewan had a 22 in the cab of his vehicle. And let me be specific, a few acres of snow, just to be really clear about what I mean, is that like, yes, like the Freedom Convoy shut down infrastructure and shut down stuff in Ottawa, but it wasn't like it didn't matter to the death cult. Like it didn't matter to Galen Weston. It didn't matter to David Thompson, right? Like it was inconvenient for the citizens of Ottawa, for sure. And I think my number one critique of the Freedom Convoy from a strategic standpoint, because my major critique of them is that their entire thesis is wrong, but that's fine. But my major critique of them is that they did everything they could to alienate the citizens of Ottawa, which is a bad idea. It's a bad position to take from a protest. Like, when you fall into protest, you are going to be disruptive. Like that's a given. You are creating inconveniences. That is a given. But you shouldn't set out to make enemies, right? That protests are very revealing in regards to who your enemies actually are, right? That when you do a protest, people will shit on you, but those are people who are not your allies in the first place. Right? Like, you have enemies. You have enemies. And a protest reveals those enemies to you. But a good protest won't generate enemies. And I feel like the Freedom Convoy really generated enemies and created a lot of antagonism within Ontario and Ottawa itself. And the shutting down, what they were doing in Ottawa was loud and it made headlines, right? But it didn't really cost the owners of the country any money, right? It didn't really cost them any money. Like, the owners of the country probably would have let that convoy continue going on in Ottawa indefinitely. Just let it keep happening. Who cares? Right? Oh, so big trucks, honking horns, big problem. Okay, yeah, all right. Right? It'll peter out. Right? It'll peter out, or eventually we'll all just be like, okay, we've had enough of this. Time to move along, which is what happened with the Occupy movement, right? Like, eventually the power structure just cleared it out with military force. We all watched that happen, that the encampments were cleared out with military force, right? In a simultaneous systemic action, right? And it's likely that that's what would have happened. But the Freedom Convoy guys... and the organizers, people like Tamara Litch, who is still in prison, by the way, they did something that mattered. They started costing the death cult money. And the fact that Tamara Litch is still in prison, like it's like the whenever capitalists say to me, like, oh, they took political prisoners, communists take political prisoners, like, Tamara Litch is a political prisoner, right? Again, I don't support what the Freedom Convoy was trying to do, and what their position actually was. I don't consider their philosophy or their stance to be valid. Like but they still are Canadian citizens and they still have the right to protest, right? And that's what I'm protecting. That's what I'm fighting for. Like I ostensibly disagree with what the protest was about, but they have the right to protest. And I think the Liberal government acted in a very despicable way, and has acted in a very despicable way. And anybody who defends what they're doing to these protesters and to people like Tamara Lich, based on their ideological positioning or their ideological ideas, it's no better than a fascist as far as I'm concerned. Like, no, you can't lock people up and charge them for protesting. Because the reality is that if they're going to do that to those guys, they're going to do it to us, right? That as rents triple, as homelessness spreads, as the economy collapses, as the housing market explodes, as the student debt bubble pops, as the credit debt bubble pops, as the dollar plummets, as the wildfires spread, as the deserts expand, right? As our infrastructure crumbles, as the civil society falls into complete and total disarray, if we gather and protest on a bridge, they'll evoke the Emergencies Act and arrest us. How do I know? Because they did it. Right in front of our faces. And the Liberal supporters go, because they're white supremacists and they had a rifle. It's like, as if Liberals are not also white supremacists. And in a way, I really respect the Freedom Convoy guys, you know? Because at the very least, here's a group of guys who, like, literally all these guys want. Like, literally. Like, this is the reason why they're so incoherent in terms of their philosophy, right? Because they don't really have one. They don't. Like, they don't have, like, a full-throated, like, well-documented, like, they're not really literate, right? And that's fine, because I'm not asking them to be. Because their entire ethos is just leave me the fuck alone. Like, I can't imagine. Like, here's a group of guys who literally are doing everything they can to participate in the civil society while simultaneously just being left the fuck alone. Right? They're buying big, gigantic trucks. They're buying infrastructure. They're buying into a profession so that they can participate in the system of capital, so that they can justify to themselves that I'm participating, I'm a valuable member of this society, right? If I don't do what I do, then you don't get your shit, right? But fundamentally, they spend the vast majority of their time by themselves, right? Living the life that they want to live, which is essentially just being left the fuck alone. And then the government comes in and says, oh, by the way, we're not going to leave you alone. And in fact, we're going to threaten your livelihood. Please trust major corporations and the government, which by definition, as a trucker, you don't. Or else we're going to take away your livelihood. And they just said no. Right? And you can disagree with that all you want, but who gives a fuck? Why is it that when it comes to body autonomy within the conversation of abortion, everybody's like, yeah, body autonomy and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to bodily autonomy for just a fucking guy who's in a truck, right? Who's like, where's the big threat here? This guy spends his time alone. He's basically isolated from the beginning. The very fact that these guys felt the need to do this in the first place should tell you how fucked up the situation has gotten. These guys don't like to get together. They don't like to organize en masse. They don't like to come together as a fucking community. These guys are hard right, individualist, libertarian, leave me the fuck alone. They don't want to organize. They don't want to create a political movement. They don't want to do any of that. This is how fucked up things have gotten. That the very people who have dedicated their lives who have dedicated their lives to the principle of just leave me the fuck alone, can't even get that. Literally their only ask, I'm willing to spend the money, spend the time, throw my life into this, all of this, leave me the fuck alone. No? Oh. Like, that's how fucked up things have gotten. And when they went to Ottawa, the Liberal government did everything they could to immediately demonize them. These people are citizens. These people are Canadian citizens. They have the right to protest. They have the right to be heard. They have the right to be listened to. And a government that actually gave the fuck about its own citizens, when it saw the people protesting in such a way, would actually go and talk to them. But that didn't happen. There was no negotiation. There was no communication. There was no conversation whatsoever. The Prime Minister of Canada stood up and called these people Nazis. Like, I grew up around these people. And don't get me wrong, they're jerks and they're assholes. And a lot of them are short-sighted and selfish and stupid. Too fucking bad. Too fucking bad. Like, I feel like the Chrétien liberals, like Jean Chrétien, if these truckers had rolled up on his property, he would have just come out there. And he would have just been like, okay, what are you guys doing here? What are we talking about? We got to talk about this. Obviously. Because that's called politics. Right? But we live in a culture where we don't know how to do diplomacy. Like, we don't. If we ever did, we certainly don't anymore. That diplomacy is a dead art in North America. It doesn't exist anymore. We're not negotiating with each other. We're not negotiating with our own citizens. We're not negotiating between groups. We're certainly not going to negotiate on the world stage. Like, we're not going to do any of that. And like, I feel like the convoy would have been cleared up in like a day. If the Liberals had just sent out like a negotiating group and had been like, okay, what are you guys talking about? And because the truckers' entire point was, you are mandating that I have to inject a by and large untested vaccine that comes from a pharmaceutical company I don't trust into my body, and if I don't, I lose my ability to feed my family. I'm just not going to go along with this. And when it's said with that kind of clarity, because like, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? We're talking about a couple of thousand of people, right? Like we're talking. Let's go crazy, like 10,000 people. Who cares? Like who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck at all if these guys are non-vaccinated? Like who cares? Really? Like, and when you get into that conversation, you just see how fucking petty it is. And how small-minded it is. Like, should they get vaccinated? Should we vaccinate people during a period of a plague? Yeah. Like, just from a, like, yeah, okay. Sure. Will it matter? Like, are these guys the ones that are responsible for the apocalypse? Are these guys spreading a horrible disease? Like, are these guys the ground zero for the... No. Like, no. Come on. Like, be a fucking adult. No. Like, yeah, maybe in the abstract I can perceive how one of them would be... But even then, the vaccine didn't prevent spreading. So, like, it's just scared for themselves. You got the chat is talking about a bad connection, dropping out, cutting off. Who knows anymore, dude? I think it's a fucking miracle that I'm allowed to be on here. I won't be for much longer. I'm sure of it. Like, really, I'm dead sure of it. That before all of this is said and done, there will be enormous social media purges. That the fascists aren't just going to let communists stand up and talk on these platforms. Like, that's not going to happen for much longer. And this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying that, like, eventually they will just rule nakedly. Like right now there is this kind of circuitous, like, sure, we'll let you be there, but they'll deprioritize you. That's how they're going after people right now, right? That you get deprioritized, right? That it doesn't matter if what you're saying is the truth. It doesn't matter if what you're saying is accurate. It doesn't matter how well researched you are. It doesn't matter how much energy you put into it. None of that matters. It doesn't even matter how popular you are, right? That if you go up against CNN, right, you're going to be deprioritized, right? And they're going to be prioritized so that whenever the algorithms suggest something to someone, they're never going to suggest you. Doesn't matter how popular you are. Doesn't matter how successful you are. Doesn't matter, right? That CNN comes first, and that if people find you, right? So if you've got a friend who says, "Oh, I really like this guy. Check out his stuff," right? Or I really like this, right? Then you're there, right? So this is the way that they've negotiated it, so that they can still try to maintain a certain level of credibility, right? But eventually they'll just shrug and be like, "Fuck you." And that'll be it. And the only people who will be on these social media platforms are the ones that the CIA and the FBI go, yeah, okay. And that'll be the end of it. Right? And that's coming. And I know it's coming. It's part of the reason why whenever I try to get the gumption to, like, spread myself out into other social media apparatus, I get really discouraged. I should do it anyway. I know I should do it anyway. I should get on Twitch. I should get on Rumble. I should get on Odyssey. I should get on Telegram. I should get on these places, right? I should do a multi-stream. I should have a phone in front of me right now and have a TikTok stream going on right now. I know. Like, I know I should do all of those things, but it's so fucking discouraging because I know it's coming. Like, I know the hammer's coming. Because, first of all, we saw it happen already with the Ukraine war, right? They wiped out someone like Chris Hedges, Lee Camp, right? They wiped these people out. Right? We saw it happen. We watched it happen, right? And when the fascists take power in a serious way, they're going to purge these places. Like, they're going to purge these places. It's coming. What an annoying culture. Like, just fucking annoying. I do think that the most annoying part about it is that the very people who scream their heads off about freedom, they don't care about freedom. Like, their idea of freedom is slavery, right? That they're literally cheering for enslavement while calling it freedom. It's just the most blisteringly annoying shit you've ever seen in your life. Just comes down to, like, worship. We're just worshiping people like Elon Musk and pretending like people like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos are just, like, entrepreneurial god kings. Like, and just pretending as though they aren't the primary beneficiaries of policy decisions and systems, right? That we've just we've just tricked ourselves into believing that it's our own individual effort. That's how it happened. Certainly wasn't, like, billionaires erecting systems in front of our eyes and then benefiting from those systems. Like, yeah, we're considered a fringe minority with unacceptable views, according to the PM and his cronies. Yeah, unacceptable views like, let's feed the populace. Right? These are the unacceptable views that the Prime Minister is talking about. That the homeless should be housed. That the starving should be fed. Right? These are the unacceptable views. Like, this is what makes the powerful the most despicable. That they're literally conflating people who are saying we should house the homeless, feed the poor, stabilize the society, everyone should be safe. They're literally conflating those people with people who are saying we should create a genocide. We should purge the society. And the purges are coming, by the way. Like, I don't think they're avoidable at this point. Like, maybe they won't be so extreme here in Canada, but in the United States, it's going to be nuts. Like, it's going to be nuts. And I said at the beginning of the stream, and I'm going to keep saying it. People are not ready for it. Like, we are not psychologically prepared to deal with the extreme nature of the roundups, the extreme nature of the destruction of the society. Like, we're not prepared to see grown men in uniforms and outfits kicking in people's doors, kidnapping people, and taking them away in armored vehicles. We are not psychologically prepared for this. And when it begins to happen, I think that the response from the populace will just be a total shutdown. We will not know how to respond to it. And I think a big reason why we won't know how to respond to it is because of how quickly it's going to happen. Right? Like, we've got people in the halls of power in the United States already calling for it. All right, you guys are telling me that I'm lagging. Like, is it cutting in and out, or like, what is it? I don't like, what is lagging? Like, do I sound like I'm cutting in and out? Is it like, am I slowing down? Like, is it still watchable? I don't know what you mean when you say lagging. Well, I mean, Twitch for sure. What other platforms am I going to be on? I'm going to multi-stream on Twitch. Basically, the idea is to get on any platform that allows live streaming, right? Like, if you can live stream it, you should. And I have live streamed on Twitch, like, years and years back. But that was when I was, like, trying to do, like, a gaming thing. And that became very stupid very quickly. And I just decided against it. And the only reason I haven't